There's a story about a farmer. He asked another farmer, "What are you going to plant this year, Jake? Corn?" And Jake replied, "Nope, I'm scared of the corn bug burrows into the corn." "Oh," said the farmer, "will you plant some potatoes?" And Jake replied, "Nope, too much danger of the potato bug." The farmer is at a loss and says, "Well, what are you going to plant then, Jake?" And Jake answered, "Nothing. I'm going to play it safe." Well, every time I read this parable, I wonder if Jesus may have had me or us in mind. When it comes to finances and taking risks, I sort of, the third servant, who buried it in the ground, I might not go that far. Because, well, indeed, in our day there could be an earthquake, a mudslide, dogs could dig it up, people could find it with all their, gadgets, and anything else. I don't think I feel comfortable with that. But this is a parable about risk-taking. And if yes, who is the one true risk-taker? Is the master the one guilty of giving such extravagantly the value of the funds to be invested? Well, they were given to the slaves. The slaves, well, for them, it was equivalent of several years' worth of wages. Is the master not a fool for entrusting such precious belonging to his servants? And then he just sort of disappears in the horizon. Some believe that the master represents Christ, who announced to his disciples that he is going to go away for a while, and that during his absence, he entrusted his disciples with the most valuable possession of the gospel. If this is the interpretation we trust, then should the master not consider a fool for entrusting humanity with God's work? Would it have been maybe more cost-effective for Christ to have either stayed a little longer on earth or make the second coming a little faster? Or is this if this parable about risk-taking, but for the servant and for us, God had entrusted us with different sets of gifts. But when we reach out with those gifts, we risk our entitlement. Thus, our outreach depends on the level of our faith. Therefore, we will respond differently. Mother Tracy, she'll stand on one end of the spectrum, giving up everything, taking the risk in the name of God and for others. Should we consider then the third servant as the other end of the spectrum, playing it safe? The master gives the servant different investments to take care of. Here we need to reflect. Do each of us receive a different award of grace? Or does it mean that we have different levels of awareness of the grace bestowed upon us by God? In addition, the master bestowed upon the first two servants the same reward. He congratulated them for a job well done and also promised them more would be given to them. Does this imply that God does not expect us to excel, but only to act according to the grace given to each of us? We can wonder why the one who was given the least was the most afraid, especially at his master. Can we emotionally connect with the one who is overwhelmed by the wealth being given to him all at once? When we have a lot, are we not concerned about protecting what we have? Are there alarm systems in the slums or in the wealthy neighborhoods? Was the third servant intimidated by the greatest gift of the other two slaves? Does people sometimes refuse to do some church activities because others seem, have done a good job, much better than they even could do? Is this then a parable of reckless protection? We can protect recklessly through our fear. When we worry about the loss of something, it is fear. It may be fear to lose the reputation based on a false appearance, fear of life in general, or fear of God. The parable says that the earth is the Lord and everything therein. We may see God's gift, the possession so precious to keep and protect at any and all expense. We may see the only from the scarcity point of view. He who fears has a little, invests a little, protects a lot, and yet they end up losing all, even God. But this is the master in this parable, God? Indeed, God is the God of grace. And the parable has him throwing the third servant or slave into hell miserably. Also, our master is not an absent master. God is with us always. Maybe we need to examine this parable in a more social gospel light. Challenging traditional interpretation is often risky business. But Jesus' parable were risky to start with, and often dumbfounded even his disciples, and us today, including the pastor. Jesus loved to shock his audience. In light of this, could we expect Jesus to herald the virtue of usury and accumulation of wealth? Would the same Jesus tell you to sell everything you have and follow him, and then throw someone into hell who does not make enough money for his master? Wow. Even if Jesus were really saying, blessed are the risk takers, blessed are the fearless, would he have illustrated it in such a parable? The first two servants played the master's game, surely making a side profit. We learn that the retainers did the master's dirty work, exploiting their brothers and sisters for their own profit and for the master's benefit. The elite make money not from interest from their bank account, but through exploitation of other individuals. They would make loans to the peasants for them to purchase seed for their crop. Such interest could raise as high as 60 to 200% of the harvest. Peasants had to pledge their land as collateral. The third servant may have been just a whistleblower. He was a benefactor of the system, but one day he could no longer do it. Maybe we should look at the parable. We may find Jesus in the oppressed, the hungry, and the poor. We can meet Christ in the places where most people do not go, into outer darkness, where the third servant was kicked. Maybe the whistleblower is kicked out of the wealthy master's domain, but now he is closer to Christ. Christ also was a whistleblower, and it led him to the cross. We receive grace as a gift, but do not hide it away in fear. We exercise our talent according to God's purpose, like Deborah, the prophet of Israel, who led the people in war and ruled them in peace. Or like Paul, the apostle, who suffered imprisonment for the spreading of the gospel. Christ was a whistleblower. He died on the cross for taking risks. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Amen. Let us turn our